What about things like Sodom and Gomorrah?
It looks like one of those mythological stories out of the Bible, right? Oh yeah, sure. Fire comes from heaven. Yeah, tell me another one. So several years ago now, maybe like 15 years ago, I was at the Society of Biblical Literature, which I was in one of these, conference rooms, and I just wandered into this session because it had an intriguing title, something about archaeological discoveries. I start listening, and as I'm listening to this presentation for about 45 minutes, near the end of it, I began to realize, oh my gosh, these people presenting think that they have found the biblical cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what they're saying in a really roundabout, really understated way. So at the end of the presentation, they stop the presentation and they open up for questions, and they describe these two city mounds that they had found on the Jordanian side of the Jordan River, and in this destruction layer and so on. And so I raised my hand immediately and I said, well, did you find any arrowheads? The reason I asked that, Matt, is when you have a destruction layer of an ancient city, if you find arrowheads in the destruction layer, it means that an army caused the destruction and they were shooting arrows at the defenders and blah, 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 blah. If you find a destruction layer and there aren't arrowheads, that means an army did not destroy the city, and then probably it was some kind of natural event, right? So I'm curious, what destroyed these two cities that you guys think are Sodom and Gomorrah? And so the researcher starts to get very bashful when I ask this question. He says, well, I didn't really want to go there, but all I want to say while we're recording this session is that it was a heat event. Right. So all of us in the room mob the guy at the front, okay, tell us what's going on. He says, okay, so we get down to this destruction layer of this city that we're beginning to think is Sodom, and we pulled up a piece of pottery, and when I looked on one side of it, I thought, oh no, our research is ruined, because I saw that it was glazed, and glazing wasn't invented until the Ottoman period, or at least the kind of glazing that he thought he saw. And the Ottoman period is 1000 AD, and if you're pulling that up, that means you've got contamination in your archaeological dig. You got later artifacts down there. But then he turned the pottery over, and on the back of it, it was typical Bronze Age pottery, but it was glazed on one side and not on the other. What on earth is going on? So make a long story short, he sends this away to a lab in the US and for testing, and they come back and say, well, that glazing is trinitite. Great, what's trinitite? Well, trinitite is that glass layer that you get when you basically set off an atomic bomb in the desert, and it melts the glass, and you get a kind of crystalline formation that's called trinitite. So this pottery was raised to over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit for a brief moment of time. Oh my gosh, this is what's going on. So they continue to bring up this glazed pottery, and eventually what they discover is, among other things, they also begin to find human remains. They find human skeletons that are complete up until about halfway up the backbone, and then there's just a scorch mark, and there's nothing on the top of the body. And they find the skeleton behind a wall that's about 4 feet high. So what's going on here? Well, long story short, they find massive evidence that a huge heat blast from the sky at about 25 degrees above the horizon incinerated these twin cities on the Jordanian side of the river, just north of the Dead Sea. Yeah, and they have the artifacts to prove it.
And again, the reason it has to be from the sky?
What's that?
The reason it had to be from above is
because of the angle. They have these human remains that apparently were standing upright behind a wall, and everything above the wall was incinerated, and they do the angular calculations, and they can see, oh, that blast was coming like this, so they can calculate the angle at which, and the stuff when they find the stuff in situ, and they've got a scorched side or a melted side, and again, they can triangulate where this was coming from. And so, long story short, from a natural material explanation, this looks like a meteor blast.
That's what I was about to ask. What was the naturalistic explanation?
Yeah, Like in Tunguska, I think it was called Siberia back in the 1800s. There was this, massive meteor blast that flattened, several hundred square miles of taiga, of, northern Russian forest and so on. And, when a meteor comes into the atmosphere, it heats up and then explodes, and it can be like a atomic blast. But again, the timing and the location and the cities all track with what is described of Abraham and Lot in Genesis 19 and the surrounding chapters. And then the Bible talks a lot about Sodom and Gomorrah for centuries thereafter, all the way into the prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah continue to mention Sodom and Gomorrah. This stuck in the cultural memory because this was a major world historical traumatic event for us, like two towers going down, like this major disaster where these two cities were entirely wiped out by a heat blast from the sky, by the hand of God, as it were. But no historical source records this, even though Sodom and Gomorrah were arguably the two most powerful cities in that entire region. They were at a trade route, from going from east to the west, from Egypt out to, the Far East, and everything was passing through there. So very powerful, very wealthy cities, and only the biblical record has a historical account of this, meteorological, geological event that we can now attest that tracks with the time period and the description. And also that blast going up creates a great vacuum, which then recollapses and pulls all kinds of salt sediment from the Dead Sea and then slams it on that location that was in the bullseye of, and that's where you get, the discussion of, became a pillar of salt, and all the hellfire, the brimstone, that was all torn up by the blast and redeposited over the cities. So it's absolutely fascinating, and folks can look this up. I'm not making this up. Steve Collins, a very reputable archaeologist from something like Southwestern Methodist University or something like this. You can look online. Just go to Amazon and type in the discovery of Sodom and Gomorrah in his book. I forget the exact title.
Thursday's on it.
But you can find it and put a link to it.
Wow.
And that really changed my perspective on the Old Testament, Matt, because what it pointed out to me is things that sounded too outlandish to be history, that even I as a believer was attempted to discount, suddenly and sensationally shown to be, actually, that's a historical event.
Now, do you think it was a meteor? Do you think that a Christian can say it was a meteor and it's God using the meteor to...
Absolutely.
I see.
I think this, the providence is in the timing. it's the timing of God. It's like
if you're a sinner and you walk into a church and get struck by lightning, something
right. Oh, that was just a naturalist explanation. No, these things are in the hands of God. So I don't see any conflict there.